Now, I want to make this presentation very informal. So if you have questions, please put it into the chat, or comments. You can put it into the chat, and as I see them, I may address them as well. So my name is Jason Haskins. I am a virtual tutor here in the ILC Center at Wake Tech. I've been tutoring here for what's this, 2023. So I've been tutoring here since 2018. Started out as a tutor on the Perry Health Science campus, and then transitioned to the virtual tutoring position that I'm in currently. So again, I want to thank you all for attending this session. So now, the objectives for this session and the agenda here is we're going to try to identify some healthy coping mechanisms for stress. In addition to that, we're going to talk about how to promote the well-being and mental health that comes along with dealing with stress. And then lastly, we're going to practice some um, techniques in reducing stress. So hopefully this whole workshop will be very informative to you all. Now, for starters, we can't start talking about stress without talking about the big or small elephant that is sort of in the room, but not really in the room, and that is COVID, right? We know that that changed a lot of how we operate in the world today. So I just thought I would throw out a couple stats here for you all in the beginning. From the American Psychological Association, their research found that about 67% of individuals have reported that they have an increased level of stress after the pandemic, right? And out of that 67%, 87% of the Gen Z individuals cited that education was a huge source in the stress for them, right? And we know that COVID has definitely changed a lot of lives. I've experienced stress. I'm thinking everyone on here has experienced some type of stress as is related to COVID, whether you had it or know someone that had it, or your job or schools or things were affected by that, right? So that experience that we had, during the pandemic has led to a lot of stress for situations for a lot of individuals, especially the Gen Z individuals, right? Um, Quick story myself here, even during the pandemic, I experienced stress because my kids were having school at home. So that was new. My oldest, he started middle school during the pandemic, and our youngest started school, kindergarten during the pandemic. So it was definitely a stressful environment in the household, making sure that they completed their work on time, in addition to the work that I had to do and what my wife had to do. So this stat I can definitely probably agree with in saying that it definitely has increased the stress for a lot of people due to the pandemic, right? Now, I want to start off by asking you all, and you can put it into the chat if you would like to, or you can unmute yourself and answer the question. But what is stress? And what do you think, or what causes stress? Now, there's no right or wrong answers to this, so I'm not looking for a particular answer, but just real quickly, you can jot in the chat and say, hey, this is what stress is, this is what causes it, or you can unmute yourself, whichever you choose. But feeling overwhelmed, yes, that is what stress is to some people, feeling overwhelmed, um, having a lot of things to do and maybe not a lot of time to complete them. That is also leading to stress, or can be stress. Um, Anxiety and stress kind of go hand in hand. So in the last session, somebody mentioned anxiety and how that affects your body, right? Now, the causes of stress, responsibilities are stressful. Yes, absolutely. Responsibilities are stressful. Money, health, all of those things. I can remember reading a meme that said, adulthood is the worst. I wanted to grow up and being a grown up or be an adult because I wanted to stay up late, but, paying bills and having all of these adult responsibilities, was not what I signed up for when I wanted to grow up as a kid. So I always tell my kids, enjoy your childhood because it's much shorter than adulthood, right? Little did we know, yep, that is very true, right? So stress actually is a normal human body response, right? It's a normal human body reaction that happens to everyone, right? Now, this can result in some physical, emotional, and intellectual responses that happen in the body, right? Yes, it's a reaction to the body, bad events or emotions, things of that nature. That is absolutely correct, right? Now, kind of a true, quick, short story here. Right before my first session, which was at 1 p.m., Teams froze up on me 5 minutes before my session was supposed to start. So that was stressful because I had to troubleshoot the computer. I had to, shut down the computer and reboot it, all within 5 minutes. And then within that talk, also what started to happen was my battery started to get low. So I had to plug up my computer. So that was a small amount of stress. I mean, it wasn't a huge amount of stress, but it was a small amount of stress that, if not taken care of properly, could lead to bigger, larger issues, right? So stress is natural, right? Actually, it is something that we all have, and we all should have some stress, just not a lot of stress, right? And it can result in all of those things happening, emotional, intellectual, and physical responses within the body that we may not want to happen, right? And as many people said, it is some type of response to a difficult situation, right? Now, the causes of stress. So there's some stressors. That's what we call the causers, or the things that cause stress. And we call them stressors. And they can range from anything from work to relationships to school. So there's a lot of factors that can contribute to your stress, right? Now, when we experience stress, so actually, I forgot to tell you all in my introduction that I am a biology tutor here in the ILC Center. So I'm going to talk a little bit of science real quick, not too much in detail for those that are not in the science field, but there's a hormone that gets released in the body. Well, really two hormones that get released in the body: cortisol and epinephrine, which we mostly refer to as adrenaline and norepinephrine, right? Those things activate what we call a fight or flight response. That now increases our heart rate, increases the breathing, dilates our pupils, all of these things when we are in a situation in which we need to either fight or run or try to figure something out, right? Because it's getting blood and oxygen to the areas that we need in order to overcome whatever situation that is, right? So it's a natural response, and it is good to have stress, just not too much stress, right? Now, when we talk about stress and the symptoms of stress, it's important to know that stress is, or the symptoms of stress rather, are subjective, right? That means that it is how that individual feels, right? Again, a little bit of science talk, the subjective things and objective things. When we talk about being objective, these are things that can be measured, right? So, for example, our heart rate can be measured, our blood pressure can be measured, our breathing can be measured. Those are objective things. Subjective cannot be measured or tested, but this is how an individual feels, right? So the symptoms of stress are subjective. However, they can appear in different forms, many different forms, right? And here you see in this picture, there are several different, symptoms, whether it is physiological or physical, that we can sometimes experience as a result of stress, right? However, this is again not a complete list of symptoms, it's just some key things to kind of look out for. Now, again, everyone may not experience all of these symptoms when you're dealing with stress. So, for example, you may not experience any digestive issues from the physical standpoint. However, that doesn't mean that you're not stressed just because your digestive system isn't working properly, right? The key thing to remember is to learn how to recognize certain symptoms, or to recognize these symptoms that are related to stress and try to correct them. So the most important thing, other than recognizing them, is to also listen to your body. Our body will tell us when something is wrong, right? Our body tells us when we're hungry. Our body tells us when we're thirsty, not thirsty like like the young kids say these days, but thirsty as in, wanting something to drink to quench your thirst, right? Or, the feeling of dehydration, right? So your body is going to tell you when you're hungry, when you're thirsty, when you're sleepy, when you're tired. So being able to listen to your body and recognize these symptoms is very important when it comes to dealing with stress. Now, again, stress can be labeled in two categories. We can have what we call acute stress, which is something that happens very quickly, but is also over finished very quickly. Then we can have what we call chronic stress, which is something that maybe takes a longer period of time to show. However, it lasts for a longer period of time. So, for example, my example that I gave you all, or it really wasn't an example, it's a true story that happened. That was an example of acute stress. It wasn't anything that happened over a long period of time. It didn't last very long. I closed down the computer, restarted it, plugged up my computer because the battery was getting low. So that was an acute example of an acute stress, right? However, chronic stress is something that can last for a longer period of time and is not helpful to the body, right? And these stressors can be anything from, again, physical stress or stressors that cause stress. So that can be anything from a headache. It can be a mental stressor where you suffer from memory loss, right? Or lack of concentration. It can also be something from behavioral, right? So it can be a behavioral stressor. That's going to cause you to have unhealthy behaviors, whether it's, your sleep pattern is not where it should be, or your food intake is not where it should be. And then we also have emotional stressors that play a part on our mood, right? So all of these stressors or factors that cause stress can appear in many different forms, many different ways, and also in many different avenues throughout our lives, right? However, when it comes to managing stress, right, we need to know that there are a list of do's and don'ts when it comes to managing stress. Now, this list is not a comprehensive list. It's definitely not a complete list of our do's and don'ts when it comes to dealing with stress. Because again, as many stated in the chat there, that stress can be a challenging process, or dealing with stress or managing with stress can be a challenging process, right? And in order to assist us with this, I have created a list of do's and don'ts when it comes to managing and coping with stress that can help us get through it, right? So we're going to start with the do list first, and then we'll move over to the things that we should not do when it comes to coping or dealing with stress. So the first thing we want to do is realize that it's important that we socialize. Now, I oftentimes have conversations with friends of mine and colleagues, and we talk about how things change over time. 30 years ago, socializing was being out, whether you are in school, you're hanging on campus, or, going to different social events, meeting people, developing relationships and things of that nature, right? Now, socializing for the most part has kind of dwindled down to, social media and posting pictures of events and things of that nature, right? But it's important that when you're dealing with stress, that you want to get out and socialize with people, right? Find certain events that you can attend, whether you are interested in excuse me, whether you're interested in a certain hobby, you can find individuals that have that same interest as yours, right? Another thing that we want to try to do when we are um, dealing with stress or trying to cope with stress is to change our attitude. Most of the time when we are in a stressful situation, we have somewhat of a negative attitude either towards the situation or towards the individual that may have caused that stress, right? So we want to change our behavior and create a more positive environment, create a more positive thought process behind that, right? That will help lower our stress, right? Now, I know I just mentioned socializing, being out, meeting individuals, developing friendships and relationships and things of that nature. But you also want to make sure that you take time to unplug from social media. So you want to avoid social media when you're at work, especially during class hours, because that can add to a level of stress. So you in class and maybe you are scrolling through Facebook or scrolling through Instagram, and you may miss some key information that the instructor has said, that is pertaining to a project or a quiz or an exam that you have to do. And now that has added another level of stress on top of that, because now you're like, oh my goodness, did I miss something? What did I miss? And I'm trying to study for this exam, and the instructor said something, and I don't know what he or she said. So that adds to another level of stress, right? Then we also want to practice what we call the 4 A's when we are talking about stress. These 4 A's are avoid, alter, adapt, and accept, right? So we want to practice those 4 A's when we are dealing with or trying to manage stress. So avoid, the first A. When we talk about avoid, we want to avoid unnecessary stress. Now, I know that may seem unlikely, but sometimes we can avoid putting ourselves in stressful situations. So you want to avoid unnecessary stressful situations. And it's okay to say no sometimes, depending on, the situation that is causing stress, whether it's at work and individuals, your supervisor or your boss may be piling up information on you or giving you projects to do and things of that nature. It's okay to say no sometimes. Hey, I have a whole lot on my plate right now. I don't think I'm able to efficiently complete this project, right? So it's okay to say no, right? And also being able to control our environment, right? So that is the avoid. Sometimes you remove yourself from situations that will also remove certain stress from you, right? The second A is alter, right? When we talk about altering something, we want to make sure that we are compromising, expressing how we feel about certain things, right? Um, Little story here. My son is about to be in 2 weeks when school starts. He's going to be a freshman in high school, and he's playing football. And he had a game on Wednesday, and he was not feeling too well about some of the things that happened during the game. And I explained to him that it's okay to express how you're feeling about what happened, because when you don't talk about, what you're feeling, or don't talk about the stress are that you have, that's going to pile up, and that's going to create more stress, and that's going to cause your body to not function properly. So altering is a second A that we want to practice, right? Also, when it comes to relationships, you want to be able to compromise, right? And find that work-life balance, whether it's between work and school, or work and home, or home and school. You just have to find that balance so that you have time for yourself, to yourself sometimes, right? The third A is adapt, right? So now when we talk about adapting, we want to reframe our problems, right? Look at the bigger picture. I oftentimes say to the math tutors here that math, people either love it or they hate it. There's no in between when it comes to math, right? Nobody says, oh, yeah, math, yeah, I can take it or leave it. It's okay, right? You either love math or you hate math, right? So let's say you have a math class that you need, right, in order to get to your end goal. So you want to look at the bigger picture, like, okay, let me take this math class because my end goal is to matriculate to a 4-year university, or matriculate to nursing school, or whatever the case may be, right? So you want to reframe those problems, look at the bigger picture, adapt, and also adjust our standards, right? When we talk about adjusting standards, I'm talking about for individuals that seek perfection. We want to understand, first of all, that no one is perfect, right? No one is perfect. So to try to hold yourself to a standard of perfection can add a level of stress on top of everything else that you have going on, right? So look at that and adjust our standards. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to achieve and do the best you can. No, you always want to do that. However, that search for perfection can sometimes add a level of stress that is not needed, right? And then the last A is accept, where someone mentioned in the last workshop about things that we can't change, right? We have to learn to accept that there are things in the world that we cannot change. There are things that are going on in our life that we cannot change. For example, my my daughter will always tell me that I'm old, right? And it feels harsh, when she's saying it, and obviously she's saying it jokingly, but I have come to accept that I'm not 20 years old anymore, so my body is not the body of a 20-year-old person, when I was 20, right? So I've accepted the fact that yes, I am getting older. So accept the things that we cannot change, right? Those are the things that we can do to help eliminate or reduce the stress. What we do not want to do is self-medicate, right? We do not want to turn to alcohol and illegal drugs to cope with stress. I know sometimes it can be easy to go down that rabbit hole of turning to alcohol and drugs to cope with it, to trying to just get your mind off of whatever it is that you're dealing with. However, that will only create other problems later on top of whatever you're dealing with, because chances are that situation isn't going anywhere just because you decided to embark on these activities, right? Another thing that we don't want to do is enter in what we call a rat race. All right. What I mean by that is looking at and comparing yourself to other individuals. Oftentimes, we can compare ourselves to our classmates or to even our friends and say, well, this person seems so much more advanced in this subject than I am, and I feel left out or I feel behind or something of that nature, right? Um, I can remember my niece telling me that, and she's 25, 26, somewhere around in there. You remember my niece telling me that it seems like everyone around her has their life together and she doesn't. It seems like everyone, all of my friends, have these good careers or they've already entered into their career, and I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do and things of that nature. So entering into that rat race, comparing yourself to other people, adds another layer of stress that we don't need. So we don't want to do that. All right. We also want to be mindful that when we are trying to cope with stress, that we do not resort to any anger or any violence, right? So we want to make sure that we are dealing with stress in a healthy manner, which leads me to the next one, the unhealthy ways, where that's binge eating, again, alcohol, drugs, or doing or eating unhealthy foods, right? Or doing unhealthy activities, right? Those are things that we do not want to do. That's not going to help us perform and to reduce or eliminate that stress, right? Now, when we start talking about techniques to manage stress, oftentimes we forget that the most powerful tool we have that's going to help reduce stress is breathing, right? Breathing is the most powerful tool that we can use to help reduce stress, right? Taking deep breaths will deactivate that fight or flight response and activate what we call the rest and digest response, which now lowers our stress level, right? So breathing, taking or doing breathing exercises, that's going to be helpful. Also, meditation, relaxing our body. Meditation can help clear our mind, right? Oftentimes, you know, it's it's good, for us to have some alone time, some quiet time. Find yourself a quiet space, even if it's for, and I know some people may be thinking, well, I'm a parent and, I have a husband or a wife and kids and work, and I don't have any time, extended time to meditate. No, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be a half hour process. You can take 5 minutes and, find a quiet area and just calm your mind, right? And just clear your mind. Also, sometimes just taking a walk, right, will clear your mind. The oxygen that we receive as we are embarking on that walk, that oxygen is going to activate this serotonin, which is known to be a stress reliever, right? Next thing we want to also remember is to be patient. Being patient means any of these tactics and techniques that we talk about today, we're not going to wake up in the morning and it's going to automatically happen. We're not automatically going to, learn all of these breathing exercises overnight, right? So be patient with yourself. It is not an overnight process by any means. However, just like most things, if you work on it, it will continue to get better, right? Now, another stress management technique is exercising, right? Exercising not only helps reduce stress, but it improves our mood, right? It also, makes our body more healthy, right? So exercising is good. Now, you don't have to, do any strenuous exercising. This is any type of exercising, from a brief walk to going to the gym to playing sports. You don't have to be a well-trained athlete or any of that, right? Just, excuse me, just exercise. That is going to help. It is been researched and found out that physical activity does help reduce stress. It is a huge stress reliever when you're doing physical activities, not to mention it serves as a distraction, right? Now, when you're exercising, it helps you to blow off steam, which also reduces that stress level, because when we're stressed, right, the vitamins and nutrients in our bodies get depleted, right? So things like vitamin A and vitamin B and vitamin D and C and E and all of those things, they get depleted, right? So exercising and proper nutrition, right, will help to, again, increase those vitamins that we need in our body, the nutrients that we need, and also reduce that stress. And again, exercising can serve as a distraction, because if you are exercising, chances are you're focused on the task at hand and not on anything outside of what you're doing at that particular moment, right? Another tactic and technique that we can use to deal with stress, and I know a lot of people are probably going to look at this one and say, ain't no way. Sleep, right? When we sleep, it actually is fuel for the mind and for our body, right? Um, we actually do need 8 hours of sleep, right? And I know some people are thinking right now, no, 8 hours, I can't give you 8 hours, five, maybe. I got all of this, I have too much stuff going on. I can't sleep for 8 hours, right? However, if you create a bedtime routine, that's going to also help you get the adequate sleep that you need, right? So whether you are, at 9 o'clock, let's just say you brush your teeth and then 9:30 or what have you, you crawl into bed and you read a couple pages in the book, right? That's creating some type of bedtime routine. If you stick to that routine, you will end up getting the adequate sleep that you actually need, right? Um, that is a good technique, right? And I know oftentimes sleep does fall by the wayside when adulthood kicks in and you have everything going on with class and work and kids and family and whatever, right? However, it's important that you get the proper amount of sleep in order for your body to function, right? So, sleep, try it. I'm telling you, it'll work. Right. Thank you for that, Miss Pamela. I'm glad you're enjoying it thus far. Moving forward, eating properly. Now, a healthy diet. Okay. So here's my thing. Here's my spiel about the diet. We know that it costs to eat healthy, right? Even though a lot of people now are more health conscious than they were, 30 years or so ago. Sidebar, when I always want to say 20 years, but 20 years was 2003, and it still was social media and all that stuff was going on in 2003, I believe, right? So I'm going to say 30 years ago. That'll push it out a little bit further, right? But people are more health conscious now than they were 30, 40 years ago, right? But it still costs a lot to eat healthy. A salad is 8, $10, but I can go to Wendy's and get a 4 for $4, right? However, we have to make those healthy choices when it comes to food, because food is going to fuel our body, is going to give our body the proper nutrients that we need, right? In turn, that proper nutrients is going to support all of the systems in the body. More importantly, it's going to support the immune system and also give us more energy. It's going to increase our vitality, give us more energy, which exercising does as well. Now, I know, and everyone knows that if you are exercising or working out or things of that nature, the hardest thing to do is to start it. However, once you start exercising, afterwards you feel better, you feel happy or glad for the most part that you started it. It's just the starting process is, the hardest part. However, you get more energy as you are doing this, right? So trying to maintain a healthy diet, that's a good stress mechanism or a good mechanism to handle stress and to reduce stress, right? So we've looked at sleep, we looked at diet, we looked at exercising. Now we want to move into what we call self-compassion, right? Remember, I told you the story of my son and things not going the way that he thought they would or should go on the football field. And I encouraged him to express his feelings, right? Self compassion. We are our worst critics. So it's important to be kind to yourself when you are in stressful situations, right? We may look at ourselves and see something that is wrong. So be kind to yourself, right? And express how you are feeling, because bottling up those feelings or keeping those feelings bottled up will only add to stress. So it is adding another layer of stress onto the stressful situation that you're already in or already experiencing, which could lead to that chronic stress that I mentioned in the beginning, right? Also, when we're talking about self-compassion, we want to have our positive self-talks, right? You can do this. You got this, right? Um, you know, before a presentation, before exam, before quiz, before a project due at work or what have you, right? Give yourself a pep talk. Yes, you can do this. It wasn't until, you know, recent, not too recent, but it wasn't until recent that, you know, you kind of understood the reasoning behind a pep rally at school, right? In high school or middle school or what have you, when you had those pep rallies, it was to get the team motivated, get them activated, like, yes, we can do this, we can win, we can do this, right? All the school is behind you, right? That positive attitude, you changing that negative attitude to a positive attitude, giving yourself those prep talks, those self-talks, that's going to reduce that level of stress that you have based on that situation. So be kind to yourself. Give yourself some room to make mistakes, right? Now, also, when we're talking about self-compassion, moving on, time management. Now, I know that there was a workshop today based on time management, but managing time can also be a stress reliever, right? You want to create a schedule, right? Now, you can put this in your phone, or you can use a calendar, old school method, right? But whatever method you choose, create a daily schedule. And along with that schedule, use what we call checklists, right? Create a list of things that you have to do and check them off, right? Because we know we all feel good when we have accomplished something. You wake up in the morning and you have this list of things that you have to do in your head, or hopefully in your schedule, right? And at the end of the day, you look at it and you're like, you know what? Today was a very productive day. I know that we've all had those days where, you've come home from school or work or what have you, and you feel like, yes, today was very productive, right? So using a checklist, checking off things as they get done, that increases our confidence, number one, and also reduces our level of stress, right? Also, getting into a routine, still kind of along the lines of the bedtime routine. Get yourself some type of daily routine that you do. You get up in the morning at, I don't know, you get up at 6 a.m., let's say, and you do 5 minutes of quiet time before anybody else gets up, right? And you continue to do that every day, right? That's going to help lower and reduce the levels of stress that you are experiencing, right? Now, in addition to time management and exercising and making sure we eat properly, staying consistent, right? We also want to have a support system, right? Now, this can be friends, this can be family members. You want people to listen, right? Have good listeners around you, not necessarily fixers, right? You may not need that individual to fix the problem. You may just need them to listen, right? So talk to your family, talk to your friends about about what it is that you're experiencing. If you're experiencing stress because I'm getting ready to take this huge exam, and this is going to make or break if I pass the class or not, right? That's stressful, right? Talk to your friends, talk to your family members about it, right? Now, also remember, in the beginning I talked about listening to your body and being able to recognize the symptoms that come along with stress. In addition to that, you want to be able to recognize those symptoms so that if you feel that you are experiencing chronic stress, then it may be time to talk to or seek out professional help. And it's completely fine to do so, right? So being able to listen to your body, recognize, hey, I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed, and I've been feeling this way for 3 weeks now. This is uncommon. So let me see if I can find some help or someone to talk to that can help me put together or help me reduce this, or put together a plan that can eliminate the stress that I'm feeling, or eliminate this overwhelming feeling that I'm experiencing, right? Here at Wake Tech, there is a care center for students, and I'm sure for employees as well, where you can go in or you can reach out to them and you can talk to individuals about different things that you are experiencing, whether it's academic, whether it's family, health, whatever the case may be. There are individuals in the care center that are there to help you. So use them, use that resource that you have available to you. And that website there, I have it up there for you all if you wanted to jot that down or so. But those individuals in the care center, they're there to help you, whether it's transportation or any issues that you may be experiencing. You can reach out to those individuals for help, right? Now, we've talked about the support system, and let's just say, for example, you don't have a support system, because not everyone does, right? We can start to build relationships, whether we're building relationships with, classmates, for those of us that have in-person class, or, again, I mentioned earlier about, a hobby that you like to do. For example, I just recently picked up tennis. I'm enjoying it. I'm not as well as I've never played tennis before. So I'm not, Arthur Ashe or, out here, but, I'm really, really enjoying it, right? Or Fettel, right? Y'all may know him. Excuse me. But again, you can create and build relationships with individuals that share the same interests or share the same hobby as you, right? So that is, again, a support system that you can have, right? So support system, exercising, diets, right? All of these things, breathing, um, can be a good management for stress, right? Now, speaking of breathing, we're going to try something here. So hopefully everyone can hear this. Please let me know if you can hear this. All right. So hopefully we were able to practice that breathing technique alongside the video as well. But again, these are all good tips that we can use to help manage stress. And again, it's not going to be an overnight process where we wake up in the morning and, all of a sudden we know these breathing techniques and we start to exercise and things of that nature. But gradually over time, if you start to do this, you will get better at it, and you will start to create a routine, and it will definitely be helpful. So again, thank you all so much for attending. Thank you. I'm glad this information was helpful. Cameron, yes, I'm glad that it was helpful in this breathing technique. Yes. Again, thank you all so much. Hopefully it was helpful. Real quickly, before I let everyone go, in the chat, there's information about the 4 p.m. sessions that are going to be occurring right here soon. So if you wanted to, yeah, I'll see if I can get that video to you all. But yeah, there's going to be other sessions that are going to start right here soon at 4 p.m. So if you want to take a look at the sessions, I think it looks like there's a research skills, goal setting, effective reading, self-discipline. So I encourage you to check out those sessions. Again, thank you all so much for your attendance. It's been great. Have a wonderful semester, and make sure you check out the ILC if you have any questions or need tutoring on any subject. Again, thank you so much, and have a great rest of the evening and great rest of the conference.